Hello, this is a quick video about service quality, characteristics of services, and then lastly, we're going to look at service quality dimensions. So, when we think of a service, I think it's so important for us to recognize customer service when we are working with a service as opposed to a product looks very different. Let me give you a quick example. When you're talking about a product, people often they don't think of the employees that are associated with that product. But it is very difficult to extract employees from the service that these employees are providing. And so when we are trying to market and manage a service, it requires a different skill set, because think of a service as a product wrapped in people. So I cannot access that service without also interacting with people. Okay? So let's look at something simple like an Oreo cookie. That's a product. I can absolutely interact with a cookie without dealing with the people that manufactured the cookie, thought, invented the cookie, worked around customer service quality with the cookie. So I could just go to a vending machine and buy a cookie, right? I don't even have to interact with anybody. I can order that cookie online and have it shipped straight to my door. But when we're talking about a service is a product that is surrounded by people. So in order to access that product, I have to somehow interact with people, either the employees or co-customers in that consumption process. So let's give an example. We are in the business of transit. You cannot take transit without interacting with people. So you may not interact with with a train operator, but you may not even see a train operator, but you will see a bus driver, right? You may not, and even if you don't see the train operator, you are going to see other people either on your way to take the train or while you're in the train. Similarly, in the bus, even if you're the only person in the bus, it can't just be you, it's you and a bus driver. So because we are dealing with people, that people component becomes so critical. And often the consumer is not able to separate the person providing the service, which is the people, with the service provider. So let's think of, let's think of an internal customer service example. You go to HR and you have a bad experience with one person at HR, or you call HR on the phone. What do you do after that? You generalize that one experience onto the masses. So you say, those people at HR, they're rude, or I really love the people in HR, or the people in HR never answered the phone. And so it's the same thing when someone has a bad encounter with one human in your organization. That person represents the organization as a whole. So it's the inseparable piece is very important, as is the perishability piece. What do I mean by perishability for services? As we produce a service, it is consumed. So as in the classroom, I'm lecturing, I'm having a conversation, then it is consumed. This is a unique situation whereby I am pre-taping something, and so if I don't like what I say, then I can always erase it and then come back to you. But still, there are going to be real time conversations. When we meet on Friday, we will have a real time conversation about the experience. And so during that time, it's hard. I can't just say, okay, guys, just delete what I just said. Unhear it. You can say I can say let's start over, but you can't unhear what you just heard, right? So the idea is that you are having these experiences in real time, which means as I say it, you are hearing it. And in today's world where video cameras are live, then everyone can easily take a snapshot of interactions. And if they are good, great. But if they're not so good, that can be problematic. Then let's think of variability. A lot of times in transit, we may have 5 people doing the same job in 5 different ways, and for a number of reasons. One, again, it's people, and so people vary. We don't have robots that are driving the buses. We don't have robots that are interacting with you in departments. And so I am going to procurement, and I need to have a purchase order. I have 5 different officers in procurement that I can deal with, and they do that purchase order in 5 different ways. One person takes 2 days, one person takes 5 days, one person by the afternoon you can get it if you give it to them in the morning. And a lot of times in transit, we figure things out. And by figuring things out, that means different people figure it out in different ways. So imagine for the customer what that is like. When you call a bank and every time you call, you get a different answer to a question, that's frustrating. The same thing happens with a customer. I have one paratransit driver who pulls up to the curb, opens the door for me, lets me out, comes into my house, puts the groceries away, and then I have another paratransit driver who puts everything by my doorstep for me. Varying times of service, and we really have to work on and making sure there's one standard. And last but not least is the issue of intangibles. People make decisions based on cues that they see in the environment, and that can be anything: facial expressions, things that you say, how you look, your decor, your how you wear your uniform, your shoes. Maybe you raise an eyebrow when you were talking to them. Body language. There are all kinds of different cues that they use to infer something as a proxy for something. And so that is an issue in services. In a way, it's not an issue in a product. So these characteristics can make services difficult. The other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly are the service dimensions. And what do I mean by that? Well, think of service dimensions. Think of customer service as a cake. So you have an entire cake, and then you slice the cake and you eat the cake. But you are eating the cake in aggregate. Yes, you are having a slice of cake. Yet, in order to bake this cake, we need ingredients. We need flour, we need milk, eggs, sugar, and butter, and all of these ingredients help to make the cake supreme. Now, if we're in a situation where we forget one of these ingredients, we're going to run into a problem. My mom, when I was growing up, would often make cakes and she would forget some ingredients. So you would get home and she's like, Sasha, I made a cake today. And why is it looking like that? I forgot I forgot the flour, so it's kind of flat, right? So when you make a cake and it doesn't have certain ingredients, then the outcome, the cake itself, is going to be affected. It's the same concept here. We have certain dimensions of service quality where if we are faltering on one of those dimensions, the customer is going to know. Now, the customer may not know what dimension you're faltering on, but they know the cake tastes different. They know that this is not the best tasting cake. And so think of the customer service in aggregate, but the dimensions are the ingredients into that cake. And so whether it's reliability, you don't want a service that sometimes is on time, sometimes it's not. You don't want a service where the first time you had a good encounter, but the second and third times it was awful. You don't want a service where people tell you can expect X and you get Y. So you have to think about performing services right, performing services right the first time. You have to think about, the reliability piece of this. You also have to think about assurance, making sure your staff is highly knowledgeable, more knowledgeable than the customers. You want to make sure that your staff wants to help the customer, goes above and beyond. It's their desire to be helpful. You also want your staff to be responsive, right? One time I was working with an organization and a lady asked, well, how many times do I need to let the phone ring before I answer it? I said, well, that question is problematic on many levels. But the idea is that you want to answer this phone as quickly as if you were the one calling. How long would you want to be sitting on that phone waiting for it to be answered as it's ringing? So we really want our folks to be responsive. We also want our folks to have empathy, because having empathy means I am considering the customer when I am designing the processes, right? You want to have a situation where you are empathetic. You understand what it is like to be the customer, what it is like to put yourselves in the shoes of the customer. And in transit, this is one of our challenges. Why? Because I think, unlike other agencies, a lot of transit professionals don't take public transit. And it's funny because when I ask them, why don't you take public transit? They say, well, it's always late, or I will never get there if I took public transit. Think of your customer, right? And so design systems and processes with the customer in mind. A lot of times, agencies will say to me, customer service closes at 6. I said, well, what time does the rides stop going? What time can I take a bus or a train up to? Oh, 11. So what happens between 6 and 11, right? So we have to think about coming up with organizations that are customer centric. And the last piece are the tangibles, and we talked about that before. What do your buses look like? What do your stations look like? What do your bus stops look like? Customers are going to be using these entities as proxies for the level of customer service. If it is filthy, or if it is brand new, if it's always clean, that's an indication of the kind of customer service. I mean, think of it. If you are going to a doctor's office and it's filthy, would you want to do business there? And so often we use tangible things, and whether it's a diploma on the wall that tells us this person is really educated and we would love for them to operate on us, or it's, how someone wears their uniform. Customers often take tangibles and use that as a proxy for the level of customer service they're going to receive. So I just wanted to cover those things quick and dirty, just to highlight, and we will talk more about this on Friday. Have a good one.